Here's another one that I think I am going to enjoy commenting on, not reacting to. I have seen this one. I watched it earlier today. And I will say I watch a lot of videos from, I think, the conglomerate or whatever, the Linus Media Group. So there's TechLinked, there's Linus Tech Tips, there's MAC Address, uh, there's Short Circuit. And I mean, I know there's other ones, but those are the ones that I can think of. And MAC Address, even though I'm not a huge Apple fanboy, I do own a few Apple products. I understand why people buy them. I used to think they were overpriced, but after you use them, you realize what you're getting is quality that the competition just sometimes doesn't offer. So whether their competition is Android, when we're talking about watches and smartphones, or if it's Windows, when we're talking about laptops. And of course, Chrome OS kind of fits. Chrome OS is kind of a hybrid in between right there, because Chrome OS will run on Chromebooks. Some of those Chromebooks are kind of like tablets. But here we are, and let's see exactly what we have in this particular video.
I would have bet money that Apple was going to announce a replacement for the Mac Pro at this year's WWDC. Because 2 years ago, when they announced that they were going to be transitioning to Apple Silicon, they committed that they were going to finish it within about 2 years. Well, they didn't. But what Apple did show is that there is a whole new generation of Apple Silicon already, a brand new laptop, a leap in iPad productivity, and a whole bunch of features, further services, and software. So let's unpack all the announcements and I'll tell you what I think. It looks like less than 2 years after the M1 was released, we're getting its successor, the M2. This update cadence is interesting to me, as we only just got the M1 Ultra variant a few months ago, which means that the M2 can't be faster than the M1 Pro found in the MacBook Pro. And it isn't. While the CPU core count remains the same as the vanilla M1, there are modest improvements everywhere. 2 more GPU cores, a media engine with ProRes acceleration, more memory up to 24 gigabytes, faster memory bandwidth at 100 gigabytes per second, and a new 5nm process, probably like the A15. Aside from significantly faster ProRes performance, things remain modest, with Apple's claimed 18 and 35% performance increases.
And I'll say, he's definitely right. He's showing us all the information, but
compared to the M1,
he almost sounds disappointed that the M2 isn't more powerful than any of the M1 superlatives, I want to call, but the M1 Pro, the Ultra, the Max, whatever, all of those things, and that's not, it shouldn't be. The M1 was for, hey, these are our consumer level products. If you need something more powerful, something for a professional level product, that's what those other SoCs were for, which were just manifested from the M1. And the M2 is replacing the M1, so its job isn't to be more powerful than the chips that are coming in the true MacBook Pros, not the 13-inch MacBook Pro, but the 14 and 16-inch one. Also, whatever you can get in the Mac Studio. Definitely not as powerful as the M1 Ultra, which is, I think, two M1 Maxes combined. Yeah, I think the Max is bigger than the Pro. I don't know. The naming structures, I don't know if words really mean anything anymore, but they tack on Pro, Max, or Ultra, and I guess we're supposed to remember which one is better. But I think the Ultra is the most powerful. Then you have the Max, and then you have the Pro, and then you have the regular one. So in doing whatever Apple is choosing to do here, it is saying, hey, it's time for us to replace what came out in fall of 2020, not for us to replace what came out later in 2021 or even earlier in 2022. So I can understand the disappointment, but I don't think it's warranted given the purpose of this product. Also, it's not a fair comparison, but it's almost like You look at Intel products, and you'll have their Core i series of their i3, 5, 7, and 9s. Then they have their server grade processors, and next year's i3 or even i5 isn't meant to replace last year's i7, i9, or Xeon processor. So here, the M2 is doing what it's supposed to do, which is replace the M1, even though, as he'll point out, you can still buy the M1 MacBook Air for the same price. So it's not really replacing it. It's just complementing it. Giving you another option. I don't know. But let's continue.
Still absent is support for Thunderbolt 4 and more than one display, the latter of which this much slower Intel MacBook Air can do, by the way.
And when words matter, text matter, when you're looking at stuff on Apple's website, even with the M1 MacBook Airs and Pros and probably the Mac Mini as well, when you talk about those USB ports, the USB-C ports, it'll say Thunderbolt / USB 4. And I think any person would automatically assume, which we shouldn't, but that because that 4 is next to the USB, which is next to the Thunderbolt, even though it's separated with the slash, that 4 applies to USB and Thunderbolt. But no, it's Thunderbolt 3, USB 4. For most people, that's probably not a big deal, but I do think that's a little sneaky on Apple's part for them to not put Thunderbolt 3 explicitly and then also USB 4.
And speaking of MacBook Air, there's a new one. Arguably, Apple's best and most important laptop has become much better. It essentially cribs the current MacBook Pro design in a much thinner package. It gets the same lovely MagSafe connect.
And current MacBook Pro meaning the 14 and 16-inch ones, not the 13-inch MacBook Pro.
Same keyboard and same notch. Despite the shape, this isn't the same screen you get in the Pro models with their ProMotion and XDR, but it is improved compared to the last Air. Brightness is up 100 nits to 500, and it sports more color, billions apparently. What I'm most disappointed with is the colors on the outside. Instead of the bright colors we have come to love on the iMac, what we get is Midnight and Starlight alongside the traditional silver and space gray.
But it's not an iMac, so I don't know why he would want the iMac colors. I know that the leaks and the rumors, and I talked about that before, is we get hyped up over these leaks and rumors, and then when the company actually releases the product and it's not what we thought it was going to be based off of what somebody thought they were told was accurate, we're disappointed. So the colors aren't the bright colors that pop as the iMacs are, but the MacBook Air for a while has been gold or rose gold, silver, space gray, and I guess starlight, or whatever it is, but they weren't the iMac colors. So I'm not the iMac colors for the iMac that came out about a year and a half ago. So again, that's another place of, well, I'm not really sure why you're disappointed. In fact, I think they added a color more so than really took anything away. But again, the leaks and the rumors pointed that there were going to be bright colors just like the iMac, and it just so happened to be that that's not true.
And I really can't figure out which one I would choose. Probably Midnight, just because it's novel. The new MacBook Air also costs more too, with a starting price of $1,200. For $100 more, you can get 10 GPU cores, or the still confusingly named 13-inch MacBook Pro, with the same chip and fan. Lovers of the Touch Bar, I'm guessing this is your last chance. This, and the fact that Apple will still be selling the M1 MacBook Air for $1,000, really completes the Apple laptop price spectrum.
And I wish I had paused it prior to that, but yeah, I got to be honest, I don't like that. I don't see why we couldn't view these releases any differently than we would their iPhone lines, where the new phone comes out, and if they choose to continue selling the previous year's model, it goes down in price. And that just didn't happen this year. And some of that might be Apple just wanting to make more money because they know they're going to sell a crap ton of these M2 MacBook Airs. But some of it might be supply chain related, where if I'm looking at the iPhones, which I know this is about the Macs, but if I'm looking at the iPhones, the last time they kept the previous year's model around was a little while ago, and I'm sure that was a strategic thing for them to do, where, hey, let's get rid of last year's model from our site to encourage people to buy the newest ones. I know the iPhone, I think 11 or 10R stuck around for a while, but I was surprised when I saw that the iPhone 12 was still available for sale, even after the iPhone 13s were released. But I really do feel that that was part supply chain issue. But even then, the prices of those 12s went down. So for them, for Apple to keep the price of the M1 MacBook Air at $1,000, even though now it's going to be approaching 2 years old, kind of seems to be a bit much. And $1,000 for a machine, in my eyes, will always be a pretty penny. And I'm not going to take anything away from the M1 MacBook Air because it is a nice machine. And if you compare $1,000 laptop in the Windows spectrum, you're still probably not going to get something that's as efficiently powerful as the M1 MacBook Air, but it still would have been nice for maybe Apple to sell that for $899. And then, of course, you could have found it on sale through Amazon or B&H or somewhere else. Not saying you can't find them on sale now through those retailers anyway. But yeah, it just would have been nice if Apple had dropped the price of that. And then maybe release the M2 MacBook Air at $1,000. But now that the M2 MacBook Air is $1,200, but they kept the price of the M2 13-inch MacBook Pro at $1,300. Yeah, I don't know who's going to buy that 13-inch MacBook Pro. I mean, some people will because of the Pro in the name. But as many of the benchmarks have shown when it came to the M1 SoC, the performance difference or the performance gains weren't that great. But then also now the price difference isn't that great. So if there are some performance differences, and you're okay with the old design, maybe those people will buy it. I know the 13-inch MacBook Pro pre-orders have already started, and I think it's sold out online. So people are going to buy it, but now it seems like they're really muddying up their laptop option. And that was one thing I did like about Apple is the simplicity in your choices, which just meant you didn't have many choices. But now looking at this, you have the 13-inch M1 MacBook Air at $1,000, starting at $1,000. Then you have the 13.4 or whatever inch M2 MacBook Air starting at $1,200. Then you have the 13-inch MacBook Pro starting at $1,300. Then you have the 14-inch MacBook Pro, M1 Max or Pro or whatever it's called, I think starting at $1,900, I think it's $1,900. It's around there somewhere, $2,000 around there. And then you have the 16-inch that starts at, something long, more than that. So yeah, they definitely have their increments, but usually you would only go up through that step process when you started speccing up the machines, not that you just in general had a bunch to choose from. So to have 3 13-inch options, one 14 and one 16-inch option, it could make the selection process that much more confusing for consumers, which ultimately will probably lead to consumers just spending more money because, of course, as we all know, the machine that you pay for is the machine that you'll continue to have since you can't really upgrade anything. But yeah, the simplicity of what the company was offering for a while definitely is starting to go away.
No longer do you choose the Mac you need and pay the price. Now you can pick the price and get the MacBook to fit because there are no deals. That's the hardware. It's an enticing and small step forward. But this is the developers conference, and what matters here is the software. And Apple announced something people have been clamoring for on the iPad for a while, and I will tell you about it. But first, let's hear from this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Need a website? Well, Linus Media Group did, and what did we use? Squarespace. With their easy-to-use tools, you too can build, maintain, and grow your business's site without any developer-type know-how. We're talking member areas, online stores, insight and analytics, and integration with third-party platforms you might already be using. Check it out and grow your business at squarespace.com/Mac address and get 10% off your first purchase. Now, who's calling me? So, I've been having pretty big arguments with people at the office about the iPad. There's a real desire to see the iPad become more Mac-like, something I don't agree with. Really, what a lot of people want is for the iPad to run Mac OS. Well, it still doesn't. But the improved...
And it won't. As with other companies, I mean, Apple is definitely unique in this space where they want you to use their software, but you can only use their software if you buy their hardware. So they want you to own all of the devices. They want you to have the iPhone because that's what's going to be in your pocket all the time. They want you to have the Apple Watch because that is a great companion device for the iPhone. They want you to have the iPad because, let's be honest, it's just a bigger iPhone. So if you just want a bigger screen of what you were doing on your phone, you want to be able to do it on. They want you to be able to do it on the iPad. And then they want you to have a Mac because if you really need to do something something productive, now you have a Mac. And of course, even just based off of what we've seen here so far, you have a plethora of options when it comes to the Mac. So no, they do want iPad OS and Mac OS to run smoothly together. But I mean, the solution for most people would be, hey, just put Mac OS on the iPad, or put a touchscreen on the Mac. And neither one of those is going to happen anytime soon, I could imagine, because that would take away from potential purchases of one of the other devices for each individual consumer.
To iPadOS bring it closer, ever so slightly. Craig Federighi announced desktop-class apps, which really just means that Apple's first-party system apps on iPad have features that have been in macOS for 20-plus years now. So, customizable toolbars and find and replace. More importantly, the iPad now supports resizable windows and to...
My guess would be, and I'm sure maybe somebody probably has a better answer to this, and maybe even videos or readings of the past could explain, but the iPad probably grew beyond what people really thought it was going to be. I mean, I don't know if it was, I don't want to say it was beyond what Steve Jobs thought it would be, but yeah, like it's, I don't know if it was ever touted to be a computer, like your main computer replacement, or replacement to your main computer. But given the hardware that's in, especially the iPad Pro, or really the Pro, the Air, and the Pro and the Airs both have M1s in them. The full blown keyboard decks that come along with it. Yeah, I don't know what the iPad was when it was first announced is what it is now, and because of what it is now, the expectations of what it should be able to do definitely have to change. And as he's about to mention, Stage Manager with Windows and stuff, the ability to have Windows, not the operating system Windows, but as you look at the picture, you can see Windows on the side, is an interesting thing to do. But then even as he'll probably demonstrate a little bit, it's still Apple's design, and it's still limiting in what it can do. So it's not a full-blown it's not Mac OS. I guess that's the best way of putting it. It is not Mac OS. It's some type of hybrid of what a full-blown desktop operating system is and iPad OS. And you're kind of like, well, this is what Apple wants it to be, so this is what we have to use if we choose to use the iPad.
Organize all the windows, Stage Manager groups them on the side, enabling you to retrieve and group them as you see fit. I'm not sure that this is all that great on a small iPad screen, but it is great for external displays with display scaling, which the iPad now supports. Stage Manager is coming to the Mac too for some reason. Multitasking on the iPad.
And even, in the tone right there. So it almost seems the point of Stage Manager was to make the iPad more like a desktop computer, but then to also bring Stage Manager to the Mac. It's like, well, I don't need that because I already have the ability to I already have a windowing system. So having these windows just kind of chilling on the side doesn't seem to be necessary. My guess is that if you put it on the iPad to make it to make the overall experience more seamless, it needs to now run on the Mac because, especially with universal control, being able to drag stuff from your Mac to your iPad, I don't know if just the open window you can drag. I don't know if you can drag one of the little windows in the Stage Manager that it's off on the side and maybe drag it to the Mac, or vice versa. But because Apple is pretty adamant on making sure that iPad OS and Mac OS are not the same thing, but at the same time want them to run as smoothly together as possible, there are going to be features in both of them that you might say, why does this have it? And it's, oh, it has it because the other one has it, and it works well in the other one. But in order for this experience to be as seamless as possible, they both now need to have it. Hopefully that doesn't lead to too much bloat in both operating systems, but we'll see.
Has undergone a confusing evolution with mixed metaphors and undiscoverable implementations. So I'm curious how it's going to work in practice. It shows that the iPad is getting more capable, which is good, but there are still some structural issues that the platform is going to have to figure out first. iPhone users should enjoy their lock screen getting more purposeful and customizable. Notifications have been pushed down to a bottom wheel to free up your background picture. The clock numbers can peek behind your image subject and be in a different font. You have a choice of 6, and
I don't know if that was sarcasm, but I laughed when he said 6. I was like, oh yeah, of the, I don't know, potentially thousands of fonts. There's a lot of choices out there, and he's like, oh yeah, you get 6 with Apple.
you can add widgets. By all appearances, the customizations look a lot like Apple Watch complications. Speaking of Apple Watch, the focus on health has been interesting. For runners, the watch gets a feature called Sensor Fusion, which interprets how you're running just from your arm movement. This includes measurements of vertical oscillation, ground contact time, and stride length. For me, I'm happy to see sleep tracking get improved with sleep stages.
And I will say, as I mentioned at the beginning, that, yeah, when you're paying for Apple products, I have to admit, you are getting quality with what you are buying. I have an Apple Watch. It was given to me, so not having to pay for it definitely makes me enjoy it a little bit more. But using that Apple Watch compared to the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4, a night and day experience. Yeah, like that's the best way to put it. I tried to use the Galaxy Watch, and it worked, but just the overall experience wasn't that good. Now, granted, I only maybe gave it 2 or 3 tries as opposed to, well, let me hold on to it for a week. But I did purchase it on eBay, and I said, and I wanted to, if I didn't plan on keeping it, I wanted to make sure I got it back to the seller in a timely manner. And that's what happened. Yeah, I returned it. And the price differences between the devices, I mean, buying the base Apple Watch, I think is $400. Buying the base, $400. The base Galaxy Watch, I think is 2 something. I don't know if it broke into 300, but 2 something. So already you can see in the pricing structure that there's probably a difference in build quality. But yeah, I was dumbfounded almost that, okay, Samsung, other large company, why are you building this trash? I mean, are you just trying to appeal to, I guess, a different market? Is it not the Galaxy, like the S series of, like the Galaxy S series of the watches? Like, did you maybe plan on having a better watch? I mean, but it is, the Galaxy whatever versus, well, they're all Galaxies, but, you have the A series, you have the S's, then you used to have the Notes, but whatever. So maybe they wanted to make a better watch and just chose not to. I don't know. But all of this just to say, I know Tim Cook said that he wants health to be Apple's greatest contribution to society or whatever. And definitely, yeah, I enjoy wearing the watch because it's allowed me to use the GPS features. It tracks calories. Don't know how accurate that is. But what I like also is I no longer have to carry my phone with me. Not because I have a cellular model of the watch, which I probably will get at one point. In fact, I have one supposedly on the way. But because I can now put music on it, which is something that the Galaxy Watch could do as well. So not saying, oh, that's a huge perk, but it's all of those things wrapped into one device, and that one device works really, really well. And he's talking about sleep tracking. Yeah, that's one thing I don't use it for. I don't sleep with the watch. I mean, personally, when I wake up in the morning, I know if I slept well or not. But for some people, hey, it's an added benefit. So not going to knock it. But for me, yeah, personally, sleep tracking is something that I do not use it for.
It tells me I'm sleeping badly. I felt a bit of deja vu during this event. They literally mentioned that you can get sports scores from Siri.
Being able to ask Siri about players or teams.
Scott Forstall announced that 10 years ago with iOS 6.
And I would say, from what I remember, not from what happened 10 years ago, but from WWDC 2022, when she was referring to those sports scores, it was because of the, and maybe I'm wrong with what he's trying to capture, but having those live notifications, I forget the exact title, but it was essentially instead of you being notified every time that something happens in, like, let's say a sporting event, I think that little widget type deal would just update automatically at the bottom of your screen. So not sure if that's what he was, if she, that's not sure if that's what she was referring to, or if that's what he was referring to. But of course, yeah, 10 years ago when just being able to ask Siri something, that's when that first was released or announced, or the capabilities were implemented. But I do think those live tile type notification deals is what was being mentioned more so in the WWDC of this year.
Then there's iCloud Shared Photo Library. This is a new feature specifically for families using family sharing, allowing them to have one place where all their family photos can go. This is great for that very specific circumstance, but you might be interested in knowing that Scott Forstall also announced iCloud photo albums 10 years ago too. Those
And I do remember that.
albums are lower quality, but they also don't use your iCloud storage either. Now, if only Apple made their operating system.
So I do wonder with that, with if the photo history or the photo cloud, whatever he just called it, if that does use your iCloud storage, does that mean if you have, let's say you take a photo, and now of course it's up in iCloud for, I guess, whatever slice of the total amount of storage that you're paying for, if you then put it in the photo library for the family photo library, is that picture now stored twice, and is it taking up data or storage two times for your monthly or your whatever allotment? I would think that's pretty interesting if it's like, oh yeah, you're stored here in location A, but you're also stored in location B, so we're going to count that as two separate photos. That would be interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if Apple did that, but it definitely, it'd be interesting.
Look like iOS 6. Bring skeuomorphism back, please. Likewise, collaboration was already a part of Notes in Apple's productivity suite for years, but it was announced here. Sure, the interaction is a little more robust as it's integrated in the operating system share sheet, letting you collaborate within iMessage chat groups. All the more reason for those Android holdouts in your life to switch over. iMessage.
Exactly. And and I mean, Apple knows what they're doing. He knows it. Most of us who do have iPhones subconsciously know it, or like myself, I am clearly aware of the moment I put my SIM card back into an Android device and I start receiving any type of group messages or multimedia from others who have iPhones, the user experience just goes straight into the toilet. And iMessage lock-in is real, and some people don't believe it, but emails from Apple C-suite people, Apple executives definitely show they know the importance of having a platform-specific protocol. And yeah, for the other operating system out there, Android, well, we're just not going to let them in. So if you want to be on board with your friends or family members that have an iPhone for iMessage sake, or for this share sheet type stuff, or that type of collaboration, yeah, you have to then buy their products, as opposed to it just being more of an open standard. So I'm sure it makes the experience good, but it sucks that you say, well, I have to buy not only your software, your hardware. So if they licensed iOS or Mac OS or iPad OS out somehow, and other vendors could then do whatever they wanted with it, then, I wouldn't complain nearly as much. But because you have to buy them both together on whichever platform, it's like, well, that sucks.
Apple also announced that CarPlay will now be able to go much deeper into your car, with the ability to take over all of your dashboard screens with Apple's interface. As a car guy, I found the concept design they showed not very compelling, but bunch of car makers have signed on, including.
And I forget when exactly he recorded this. And of course, different reporters or YouTubers have their sources. And of course, what's on the screen came directly from WWDC. So we all saw this. But I do listen to the Vergecast, and I believe many of the reporters, or it might have just been one, but reporters from the Verge did reach out to many of these car manufacturers. And even though these manufacturers are here on the screen, and Apple said that like something outrageous, like 90% of people wouldn't buy a car unless CarPlay was on it. I would say we collectively are going to call their bluff on that one, because those car manufacturers then never, like when the reporters reached out to them, never committed to what Apple had said. That, oh yeah, we're on board and this is going to happen. You plug your iPhone in and it's going to take over the user interface. So Apple's saying one thing, the car manufacturers saying something else. Apple's also claiming that, yeah, people aren't going to buy cars unless Apple CarPlay is integrated. Like, so they're not on the same page. And I'm sure Apple said what they wanted to say to see what the results would be. But if CarPlay is not on a car and people need a car, they're going to buy it. And if they just need to then buy an aftermarket head unit or something, or aftermarket stereo system, whatever you want to call it, that has CarPlay or is CarPlay compatible, then they'll do that. But personally, I don't like the way that is. I don't want my cell phone taking over my car. They are two separate things. I don't mind my cell phone speaking to my car's radio via Bluetooth, and that's it. But yeah, for Apple to then take over the whole vehicle, no. That's, in my opinion, too much. And I think these car manufacturers know that too. Like, hey, this is our vehicle and we will let you in to a certain extent, but we're not going to let you take over all of that. Plus, yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's a good idea.
Ones who are switching over to Google's infotainment operating system. I'll be really cross, though, if they don't have an option for classic CarPlay, if I prefer my car's instruments, but Apple's infotainment. This feature is a long ways off. If you remember, CarPlay was originally announced with iOS 7, but didn't get added to car systems for 2 years. Which brings me back to these updates. There's a lot in here that got announced. Editable and deletable iMessages, passkeys instead of passwords in Safari, cool machine learning intelligence with text recognition, and the ability to lift the subject out of images. In terms of what devices will get these updates, well, the iPhone 8 and 10 are now the oldest to get iOS 16.
I do think that's interesting. I'm sure if we went back and looked at the architecture of the devices, whatever A series chips were in the 6S and the 7, because the 6S and the first SE were the oldest ones to receive iOS 15. So for them to drop those two, that makes sense. But then to also drop the iPhone 7, I do wonder what's the limiting factor in that situation. I'm sure I'll probably Google at some point and get an answer. But I also know that I think they supported the 6S for longer than they should have. And I'm sure they're just like, we're just going to drop it. And whether it's for a specific hardware limitation or if it's for, I guess, the total number of users who still have phones of that age. I mean, right now, I can think of one person who has an iPhone 7 and one person who has an iPhone 6S. Those things were released a while ago. So for somebody to still have them, kudos. Excuse me. In fact, I know another person who has a first edition SE, but she just uses it as a kind of a spare phone whenever she might need it. But yeah, I'm sure there's a reason, and they'll probably get some additional people to upgrade who might have thought they were sticking around on their current device for a little while longer. But yeah, I think I at some point will do some research to figure out why the 7 was also dropped.
iPad OS cuts off with the A9 powered 5th generation model. Okay. And watchOS 9 is not available with the Series 3, which is still available in the store.
Which that right there that's bad business. I mean, it's good business for them financially, but if they know they're dropping support for something in a couple months, take that mess out of the store, because people are going to see, oh, here's a cheap Apple Watch, let me get that one. And then, yeah, whatever it's running right now is what it's going to continue running indefinitely. And yeah, that's that's deceivious. Deceivious? Deceiving? Mischievous? Did I just make up a word? Mischievous? I think I did.
But what I felt was missing here was a cohesive story. What are the problems Apple is trying to solve for their users,
And that's one reason that I still feel like I like Apple products. I really do. But I feel like I'm in love with Android because Android is just so versatile. And when I watched Google I/O this year, I felt like Google was saying, hey, yes, we're designing these products, but by designing these products, we are also improving things and trying to solve problems. With Apple, I feel like, yeah, we want to just sell you more crap. The health features aside, which are pretty cool. I mean, that running gait thing might be, nice for some people. But yeah, is it really solving a problem? Probably not. If somebody's that concerned about their stride, they'll probably go seek some professional help. But and because most of us aren't professional runners, so we don't need something to pinpoint any type of real issues, unless it's causing us pain or something. So yeah, what is Apple trying to solve? Like, what problems is it trying to solve for its users? And I just like him, am not sure. New devices, it's cool. Dropping support for older devices, okay. Still selling a watch that you're going to drop support for in a matter of months. More expensive devices. Still transitioning from Intel to Apple Silicon. Um, yeah. So yeah, what is Apple trying to solve for its customers? And yeah, like I do not know.
developers? I heard a lot of everyone requested this, but with no curiosity or explanation as to why. I think that would help with the development of these features, no? Apple has
And I will say one thing that at least keeps me interested. And given the state of I don't want to say given the state of the country or the world, but recent events have happened, and when I say recent, within the last couple of years. But I do feel, from what I can remember, Apple tries to do a good job of being inclusive in its marketing, not necessarily in all aspects of the company, I can imagine, but even with those pictures we just saw, you saw the diversity. When they have different presenters on stage, there is some diversity in that, so that shows that there's some diversity within their realm of employment. And that's, I mean, I do like that. But again, if I'm giving you money, I still want something that's going to, improve my life. I want a reason to say, hey, let me get this newer one, even though I currently have one, not just because it's newer. And I just don't know, aside from things maybe just looking a little better, or the M2 MacBook Air having MagSafe, why? I mean, why spend more money on this one just because it's newer?
diversified itself into remarkable complexity. There are so many different hardware models you can buy now. It almost feels like the 90s all over again.
And I'm not going to pretend to remember that, even though I was alive. But what I was trying to allude to, but probably didn't quite grasp or depict, is when I used to go to Apple's website, I felt it was simple. I want this, this, that. Never bought anything from their site directly, but I could see like, hey, this stuff is simple. When I would go to Dell's website, I was like, what there's too many choices. And it's instead of saying, okay, I want the XPS 13, and once I select 13, I'm able to configure it. It's okay, just on this main screen, I have the XPS 13 in this color, that color, this RAM configuration, this much is storage, maybe even this size battery, backlit keyboard, no, and it was like, well, I know what machine I want, and then let me customize it after that. I don't need to see all my options all at once while I'm scrolling through your page. And as Apple has grown and the number of products they're selling, that portfolio has expanded, yes, it kind of feels that way. And even though with the MacBooks, I think I'm okay with their desktop, and I'd say the Macs in general, I'm okay. I mean, there's a lot of them. With the iPads, I'm okay. There's still a lot of them, but the one part of their website that does make me feel like I'm looking at Dell's website is if you go to the Apple Watch section of their site, it's like, I don't know what, like you have a filter and like there's too many choices for what it should be. And that's it. And I feel like that's kind of what he's getting at. And I know I'm specifically talking about the watch, but in general, yes, they are selling a lot of products, and it can be confusing for consumers.
And the list of features to go through is exhausting, even if many are really just part of cross-device services. My big question is, how many will make it to launch in the fall? Last year with iOS 15, many of the headline features weren't ready yet, some not even until a few months ago. It begs the question, is Apple running faster than it needs to? Thanks for...
And I'll say yes, but that's any big company in 2022. Like it baffles me because, so Tim Cook's CEO of any company, but Tim Cook in this situation, and how shareholders view the success of, the CEO and all the other people in the company is the company growing? So if Apple made $200 billion, let's say they made $500 billion last year. If they make $500 billion again this year in profit, then that's a failure because they didn't grow. And you have to end up just saying, okay, what are other ways we can now make money? Because we are already killing it. We make, we've had record profit setting quarters, time after time, year after year, whatever. But we have to continue doing that, and that's not sustainable. And then in order to try to keep up with it, you end up with this where, we just need to sell more stuff. We didn't have our foot in that market. Now we're going to put our foot in that market and hope that we can sell a lot of whatever. So, I do think they are taking on too much, but it's not their fault. The company has to continue to exhibit growth.
Coming outside for this Mac address. If you like the new MacBook Air, then give this video a like. And if you are a lover of the Touch Bar, then you must subscribe. Now, I'm curious in the comments what of the new features announced today at this WWDC you're most interested in. I'm curious who they're for.